Okay, good afternoon to everyone, and I welcome to all invited distinguished guests, Professor Rao, Dr. Rana, Dr. Gurpure, for this particular program. Family heads, Vyas, and Dean Faculty of Science, Professor Haribhai Kataria, and all head of the Department of the Faculty of Science, all faculty colleagues, and research students and MSc students who have joined in large numbers. Uh, Luminaries like Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam gave the modern India the motto of the dreams transformed to thought.
सपना सारवनारा हमें ज्योत जलावी सृष्टि नवली सहसा सर्जनहारा हमें वडोदराना विद्यापीठना सपना सारवनारा हमें ज्योत जलावी सृष्टि नवली सर्जनहारा हमें गगन कुसुम कर धरनारा हमें मगन मगन थई फरनारा मगन बात हमें भरनारा हमें दैन्य तिमिरने हरनारा हमें वडोदराना विद्यापीठना सपना सारवनारा हमें ज्योत जलावी सृष्टि नवली सहसा सर्जनहारा श्री सयाजी विद्यापीठना ज्ञान दीपने धरनारा श्री सयाजी विद्यापीठना ज्ञान दीपने धरनारा सत्यं शिवं सुन्दरं नो मन्त्रनन्तर हरनारा
Okay, thank you, Arvind. Thank you all. Now, I would request our Dean, Professor Haribhai Kataria, to welcome you all and say a few words. But prior to that, just I will give a brief introduction of Professor Kataria. Professor Kataria is presently the Dean of Faculty of Science, and he is a professor of mathematics. He has been earlier the head of the Department of Mathematics here in the Science faculty. He also working as a proctor of the MS University of Baroda. His research area is fluid dynamics and nanofluidics. He has published a number of research articles, including 3 review articles. He has also published a book on calculus and matrix and delivered several talks in conferences, seminars, and in popular talks. He is presently the president of Gujarat Ganit Mandal and was also earlier the Senate and the syndicate member of the MS University of Baroda. He is working in several committees of the university, and as I mentioned, one of the major role of his is the as a proctor at the university level. And now I will request Professor Kataria sir to welcome the guest and say a few words about the program.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, am I audible, Professor
Yes,
Jha?
yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Yeah. Uh, Professor B.J. Rao, the Honorable Vice-Chancellor of the University of Hyderabad, Dr. Rana Singh Ji, the Honorable Vice-Chancellor, Sanskriti University, Mathura, uh, uh, Professor Santosh from IIT Mumbai, uh, our Honorable Vice-Chancellor and our guiding force, Professor Parimal Vyas, uh, colleagues from the faculty and outside the faculty, and dear participants. It's indeed a matter of great pleasure for me to have such a wonderful speakers for this webinar. I welcome all three speakers in this
वाले मासे
webinar.
नहीं बोल गया वो बोर के फ्रिज और रहेगा था क्या लेन पूजा भाभी
Please,
Arun,
Please mute your microphone.
please mute your mics, please. In 20th century, the economical liberalization opened up several industrial avenues, which has ramification in the modern 21st century in India. But soon we realized that the economic liberalization was not enough for overall holistic development of our country, with ever increasing globalization and modern industries with automation, which challenges the very existence of job avenues. Contrary to this,
मुझे लगा कि ये आपका यूज करते
the world had
Sir, there is a lot of disturbance. I think that they should mute the microphones.
PK Jha, you please ask Arun to mute all.
yes, yes.
मुझे लगा कि सिर्फ ये उसका चैनल
Hello.
Continue. I will.
Yeah. Contrary to this, the world had made for more developments, not only due to the economic policies, but also due to the highly effective and far-sighted educational policies. One common aspect was the strength of the alliance between the industry and higher education institutions. Such associations and interdependencies lead to a holistic growth of the developed nations with optimal use of resources. At the very crux of such association lies the fundamental research and innovations. Similarly to GDP, which is an indicative of the blooming economy, a need for the grading and ranking of higher educational institutes is also necessary. We can proudly say that the National Education Policy 2020, as envisaged by our Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Bhai Modi, has opened the floodgates in this regime and is a firm step which will lead to educational liberalization, making India and its citizens truly globally competent, nurtured with the skills of 21st century with an impasse. Hello.
Yes, yes, please. Sir.
Yeah. On the development of local needs and for the grading and ranking of the higher educational institutes. In this regard, the higher education institutes are out to focus on research and innovation by setting up startup incubation centers, technology development centers, centers in frontier areas of research, greater industry academic linkages, and interdisciplinary research including humanities and social sciences, research built up into the matrix of socially sensitive problem solving norms at the core of educational functioning. Every stakeholder of the modern education in India has a clear role to play with the incremental responsibility for a greater role for the cause of humanity. It is apt to mention here that NEP 2020, when implemented in its true letters and spirit, shall transform the educational pursuit into a gateway for global excellence towards our national aspiration of India becoming a global economic power. Today we are celebrating first year into the implementation of NEP 2020. We have dignitaries who are at the forefront and torchbearer of the implementation, who will share their experiences thus far and give insights into what has to be done in order to effectively be the stakeholders in the realizing the vision envisages into the NEP 2020. I once again welcome all the renowned speakers and our Honorable VC sir, all head of the departments, professors, research students, and colleagues. With this note, I now request Professor P.K. Jha to take over and invite the resource persons.
Okay,
Thank you, one and all.
Thank you very much, sir, for your inspirational words and some brief about the NEP 2020. And of course, we are celebrating for 1 year of this. On this occasion, we have 3 speakers for today's program. First is Vijay Rao. So I will invite Professor Vijay Rao for his talk. But prior to that, just I will briefly introduce him to our audience. Professor Vijay Rao, Vasuttar Jagdishwar Rao, has recently taken up the Vice Chancellorship of Hyderabad University just a couple of weeks ago. Prior to this assignment, he was senior professor and chair of biology, dean faculty at the ISER Tirupati. And prior to that, in fact, he was at TIFR as a professor and chair biology for several years, and successfully headed the programs of mechanism of genome dynamics and cellular adaptation laboratory at TIFR. His area of specialization are molecular basis of genome dynamics, computational biology of genomes and protein active sites, cellular physiology and metabolism, fields in which he has made fundamental contributions. Apart from his research in the domain of biology, he is also interested in the dissemination of scientific knowledge and outreach activities. And he has published several, maybe about 130 research publications with very high number of citations. Professor Rao is also National Science Talent Awardee, maybe long back. He did his MSc from Osmania University, then PhD from ISC Bangalore, and did his postdoc from the Yale Medical School, where he served as senior scientist for 7 years, and then he joined TIFR for several years. He is the fellow of all 3 academies of India, that means INSA, NASI, and Indian Academy of Science. He is recipient of Sir J.C. Bose Fellow of the Department of Science and Technology, India. He is a chief member and advisor on various committees. He has won many awards and fellowships. He is chief editor of Journal of Biosciences, a flagship journal of Indian Academy of Sciences, which jointly publishes the paper with Springer Nature. He has been very actively given the lectures in DSP Inspire programs. So articulating the current excitement of basic biology to undergraduate students across India. He perceives biology as a complex manifestation of physics, chemistry of dynamically evolving system and emphasizes the design principles in biology. He has delivers numerous technical and public lectures for varied audience. Regarding young minds, he has been minds has been his passion, which he is now doing at Auguste Foundation, Kuppam. I will now request Professor Vijay Rao to uh, deliver his lecture for 45 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me here on the National Education Program event at MSU Baroda. Am I audible? Am I visible?
Yes, sir, you are visible also and audible also.
Okay. So this is a very pleasant occasion to reach so many minds there, and most of them are young minds. And we are at a turning point in our national history towards achieving higher education goals. I'm going to share my screen and take you through some important thoughts which are derived from the National Education Policy document, and then take you into the realm of how to achieve it in the years to come. The challenge is to taste the pudding. We have found the recipe of the pudding, but we have to make the pudding and taste it. That's the next challenge. So I will try to outline some of my ideas and leave you with a trajectory with which all of us can follow and try to achieve. I'm going to share the screen now and see how it comes up. Is my slide visible? I'm going to go full screen after this. My slide is visible, first slide.
Yeah, it's visible.
I'll go full screen now, and after
Yes.
that I may lose you because full screen will see the complete slide. I may not see you, so I'll go full screen.
क्या
Okay, is my full screen
बैग मेरा
visible?
ब्लैक वाला ले जाइयो हाँ
All the audience, please mute your microphones. All the audience, please mute your
Audience,
microphones.
please mute your microphone. Let me remove some of the.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. You please continue. Yeah.
Okay, my first slide is visible, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, visible.
Okay, so national education policy challenges and opportunities. I have an outline here to roughly take you through a trajectory. What is it we are looking at? What is national education policy? And why do it? Why do we need it? And then how to do it? Then implications for higher education system, especially in the research domains.
तुझसे क्या मतलब है
अरे
मतलब तो है, नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी बहुत मतलब है.
Apologies, sir. अरे जाजी उनको बताइए. Please.
अरुण को बोलना है जो हटा के लिए अरुण को.
ठीक है, मैं अरुण को बोलता हूँ.
क्या हो जाता है 500 लोग ज्वाइन कर लेते हैं तो फिर उसके पास भी नहीं रहता है.
ठीक है, ठीक.
So let me proceed further. I hope most of you are with me. So I want to give you some nutshell of what is national education policy. You might have read about it, but I think it is important for us to sort of recapitulate some of these. This is a very big document, and the vision of the document is very, very inspirational. The goal of this document or the policy is to take us, the nation, into 21st century education while building upon India's traditions and value systems. It calls for a need to enable us to acquire new skills, one that will help us to learn how to learn. This is very important. We have to teach the students how to teach themselves. We all have to learn how to learn. Eventually, learning, teaching, acquiring knowledge is do it yourself exercise. So therefore, this vision document, this policy will guide us towards making us learn ourselves. The future looking NEP 2020 has replaced the older document, which is 34-year-old. And in the older document, the emphasis was on how to make education accessible to all. But now we are looking for a transformative change where we will reach the students in a manner that they not only acquire degrees, but they acquire skills. So acquiring skills, inventing innovative methods is the goal of this national education policy. There are details of it in the document which I may not belabor, but there are very important details that most of you should go through when you have time. I am only going to touch upon the important vision aspects and then take you into how to achieve it. Let's see. I'm trying to get to the next slide. Okay, now it's working. And this, of course, was heralded last month in September by the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji. The author of this document, with a group of important and eminent people, was Dr. K. Kasturi Rangan. And he said that National Education Policy 2020 would bring transformative change in Indian education system and align the country towards the needs of the 21st century while remaining rooted in Indian values. So what is it? It is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. This is a very big goal. This is all-encompassing goal to ensure inclusive, equitable, quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all by 2030. Earlier, we had struggled and we have achieved the right of education, right of children to free and compulsory education in the earlier document. Now we are going several steps ahead where we are ensuring inclusive, equitable education, which is lifelong with all the necessary skills. Objectives are very clear. It is universalization of education with 100% gross enrollment ratio. That is, everybody who is aspiring for education must go into the education and the system must enable it. It should be equitable, high quality education for all learners regardless of social and economic background. You can see the vision is almost divine. And that is the vision that we should set out to. There should not be any paucity in our vision. And this document actually marches ahead in that direction. The policy aims at generating Indians who are capable of rational thought, rational action, possessing compassion, empathy, courage, resilience, scientific temper, and creative imagination with sound ethical moorings and values. So this is truly an Indian system, truly the ancient Indian system. It should be safe and stimulating learning environment. The education system should provide safe and stimulating learning environment with good physical infrastructure and appropriate resources conducive to learning. Fundamentally, the principle of NEP 2020 breaks down all the silos. There are no hard separations between arts and sciences. At least this is music to my ears, because truly knowledge is interconnected. Knowledge is circular. One branch of knowledge feeds into the other branch of knowledge, feeds into the other branch of knowledge. For example, basic sciences, when they happen fully, gives rise to engineering. Engineering, when it fusions, happens technology. When technology takes shapes, patterns and interesting designs come out. Interesting machines and interesting processes come out. And through these interesting patterns, designs, artistic thinking comes out. From artistic thinking, imagination comes out, and from imagination, again, basic sciences come out. You can see one stream of knowledge feeds into the other stream, and therefore, the real silos have to be broken down. There are no hard separations. Curriculum and extracurricular activities, vocational trainings, etc., are all done in an interconnected manner. All education must be interdisciplinary, holistic, etc., etc. Sciences, social sciences, arts, humanities, sports, etc. They all have to be learned for their own values. And when you learn a subject for its own value, you actually can end up learning other sciences also. So this is all interconnected. And that's the fundamental principle of NEP 2020. Teachers and faculty are the heart of this learning process. Their recruitment, their continual professional development, their positive working environments, their service conditions, all these have to enable the process. We'll discuss about how to do it. And for this to happen, there should be substantial investment in a strong, vibrant public education system, as well as the encouragement and facilitation of true philanthropic private and community participation. This almost sounds utopian, but this is how the system, the vision has to be set up. And that's how it is set up. There are other important key areas of focus where the authors of NEP 2020 have prescribed that we must inculcate critical and interdisciplinary thinking. We must inculcate the habits of discussion, debate, research, and innovation. These are all mind-related traits, and we must realize important ways of doing this, and we'll discuss about how to do it as I proceed further. And in the pandemic, we have learned how to reach across distances in the virtual space as we are doing now. So the virtual space offers enormous opportunities to crosstalk, to communicate, and then reach minds. The benefits of online and digital education can be reaped while addressing and while mitigating the downsides. But one must follow a balanced path. Major highlights of the National Education Policy 2020, all of you must have read. The important pillars are our primary, our school teaching will change to a different model, that is 5 + 3 + 3 + 4 years of education. So 5 years would be 3 years of pre-primary education and 2 years of primary education. So the important hallmark is the education starts even before the child has joined the school in a pre-primary phase. That is where the fundamental value systems can be inculcated in the child, and having inculcated those primary values, the child moves into primary education. And then comes middle school, high school, and junior college, etc., etc. Mother tongue has to be emphasized when the child is learning the basic concepts of the world. Mother tongue is a very important vehicle for the child to use so that the child understands what is knowledge, what are the basic concepts. And then after that, the child can pick up other languages such as English. Starting the child right from the beginning into English may create deficiencies in his or her thinking. The thinking is much more sharper when the child is taught in the mother tongue. This is a well-proven fact. Therefore, mother tongue is brought to the center focus in the primary school education. This is not to say that we do not emphasize on English. English has to be picked up. English is the global language. At higher education, the Higher Education Commission of India will will set as a platform that will be set up as a single overarching umbrella body for entire higher education. We will learn about the details as I proceed further. So the separation, the hard separation between subject streams will be done away with. If the student puts in 1 year of education in the college, he or she will get a certificate. If he or she puts in 2 years of education, he or she will get diploma. Certificate and diploma, etc., are the exit option. The student can go out from the education stream, pick up additional skills from the real world learning experience, come back and rejoin. So there is enough flexibility for the student to exit out and come back. This is a real hallmark of the new education program. And then if the student puts in 3 years, then he or she gets bachelor's degree. And if additional years are put in, then you have a stepping stone towards PhD program, etc., etc. Fundamentally, this is a 3+1 year undergraduate program. And all these credits, a certificate-based credit or diploma-based credits or bachelor's degree-based credits, are all transportable. You can earn these credits in one institute and use it in another institute and augment your next steps. So there will be a banking system of your credits, which you can take from one place to the other place, etc., etc. This is all possible because of the digital world that we are in. So you can digitally store and recall your credits in the academic world. So some more details. University Grants Commission will be replaced by Higher Education Commission of India. The rote learning will be replaced by concept-based learning. Degrees will be replaced by skills. These are the major changes that new education policy will usher in. This is supposed to be transformative, and it is transformative. It is a change from what to think to how to think. This is a major change if we think about it. We have been taught about what to think earlier. Now we will be taught about how to think. This is going to be flexible, as I articulated earlier. It is organic. It will enable foundational and higher order thinking. These are the main tidbits that I'm highlighting, and we must internalize these main take homes. Only when we internalize, then the vision becomes clearer. So there are take homes. It's a flexible system. It is a convenience-based system. It is knowledge-based system. It comes under a single regulatory body, and there are academic bank of credits that you can use. And then you can move on learning education via knowledge and interacting with the system, with the larger world via work. Combine the two by having flexible system where you can exit out and come back again. Now the proof of the pudding is in its taste. If the pudding doesn't taste well, then the protocol of making the pudding is not correct. So we are all excited about the vision. We are all excited about the take homes that the NEP 2020 bestows upon us. But how do we do it? This is an important challenge. How do we do it? What are the real challenges? I'll take you through some points that people have already elaborated, articulated in multiple fora, and having touched upon some of these points that the experts have pointed out, I'll come down to some of my own innermost feelings related to NEP 2020 to connect how some of these thoughts can be implemented through human activity. At the end of it, a policy is only people. Policy is not a document, it is people. Policy has to be translated into action by people, that is us. And we must realize a plan of action so that we can implement it as a human process. How do we do it? I'll touch upon some of those. So there are implementation challenges, and therefore These challenges have to be overcome by bodies which will be set up. Okay, there will be administrative bodies which will put in place 1, 2, 3, 4 action plan in a phased manner. Why phased manner? Because for the country to get benefited from such a large program, we have to go in a phased manner, in a systematic manner, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. We have to decide what to do one as one, and only after doing one can we do number two. Only after doing number two can we do number three. So this has to be a planned, phased process. And therefore we must first of all recognize, we must program what are these stepwise processes, each of which requires the previous step to be implemented successfully. And the implementation must be comprehensive. It cannot be done in bits and pieces. This is the challenge of this vision. If you do in bits and pieces, the vision is fragmented. The moment the vision is fragmented, it is no vision at all. Therefore, NEP 2020 requires us to work together in a systematic, phased manner, and all of us work on it in a comprehensive manner so that we all interconnect with each other and perform these stepwise processes, which will be prescribed by bodies which will be set up. So this is a kind of a bureaucratic setup that I am going to describe. Bureaucracy is to tell us what are the steps, who has to do what, which body has to do what, etc., etc., etc. This is an apparatus, this is a mechanism that will be set up, and that's already happening. I'll touch upon some of these. This is a collaborative implementation plan between the center and the states in a federal system. If some states do not join, then there is a break in the chain. That's not correct. All the states have to be part of this as stakeholders. This is not just the center's vision, this is entire country's vision, where center and states form one single organic body. And this requires timely infusion of requisite resources, human resources, infrastructural resources, financial resources, that both central government and state government should put their things together. It is possible to do it, and it has to be done. Most important challenge is to set up early childhood care and education infrastructure. Remember, in the 5+4+4+3 system that I elaborated earlier, the first number 5 is 3+2. First 3 years are pre-primary school education that happens in the Anganwadi type of systems, where the child is exposed to values, exposed to cultural habits, exposed to important fundamentals of what is language, how to do certain simple tasks, etc., etc. And there we need to set up infrastructure for early childhood care and education in Anganwadi system, etc., where we need to have passionate teachers. That is a very important challenge, because if that journey begins very well, it is very likely that the journey will proceed very well and end very well. And therefore, the journey has to begin very well there. In conclusion of this segment, I would say quality of teaching is one of the primary agendas of the policy. You can see how loaded this statement is. Quality of teaching is a very important requirement for this vision to fructify. Without improving the way teachers are trained, it will be almost impossible. It will be difficult to improve the quality of education. So teachers are the center points. They are the deliverers. Their quality matters. They need to be trained, retrained most of the times. And towards the end, it is intriguing to see how the norms of this policy will be implemented, how we can be sure that this is the new age for the Indian education landscape. So I told you all the nitty-gritty details and important take-homes of this document, and we'll now go into some details of how implementation is realized. In terms of higher education, the vision is to set up a national research foundation as a single overarching umbrella. And what is the purpose of this umbrella? This is to catalyze and expand research as well as innovation, thereby making a superpower by 2040. So this is an organization, and there is a structure to that organization. You can go into those details. This is an organization which is made up by leaders in science, leaders in other educational activities. And these leaders will pave the journey for others to follow. It will foster research and innovation in universities, colleges, and all activities in a manner that is interdisciplinary. It will evoke robust system of peer review. In this NRF, proposals will be sent and there will be a robust system of peer review so that quality proposals are picked up. And when quality proposals are picked up, it is not based on any other parameters but the quality alone. And this is critical for building capacity of quality research in universities, colleges across the country. To lead India into the path of new discoveries and innovations and solutions. This is the goal. India has been a source of knowledge and innovations for a long time, especially in its ancient setup. We were the ones who gave the music, culture, paintings, dance, mathematics, astronomy, Sanskrit to the world several thousands of years ago. We were extremely creative. India as a nation was one of the wealthiest countries in the world then. About 30 to 40% global GDP was owned by India then. 30 to 40% of global GDP was sitting in our country. This is about 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. We were very rich, we were very resourceful, we were knowledge driven. Our system was very rational. Our people used to debate. Our people used to convey concept through debates. Shankara used to conduct debates about Advaita. Advaita debates used to happen in the society. We were open system. We were completely transparent in terms of knowledge dissemination. Subsequently, things changed. We became servile, we became poorer, we lost our resources. We are now subservient to the West in terms of many requirements. This has to change. National Research Foundation has many subdomains: sciences, technology, social sciences, arts, humanities, health, etc., etc. All these subdomains will be driven by quality, will be driven by commitment and deliverables. And that structure is being put in place now. Each domain will have a directorate. There will be very productive liaison between different researchers across different branches. This mechanism, this apparatus is being put in place now. And there will be periodic update of research areas. There will be free dissemination of knowledge in the research findings. All these pipelines will be set up. And therefore, we will become a very interactive, open, and very bubbling, knowledge-driven society. That is the goal of this National Research Foundation. The funding is decided by original ideas, wider applicability in the society, and the funding is also based on how much of research infrastructure is already in place. So our funding will be quality ideas, wider applicability driven, and research infrastructure centric. It will allow research and innovation proposals in certain format so that there is capacity building, there is institution building in innovative areas, and there will be larger, longer duration projects are also allowed, which are of national importance or national inspiration. I will take you through our model at University of Hyderabad just as an example. This is an example because this has worked here for us. even before NEP 2020 was put in place. So therefore, these models are possible to implement. It has been done in Hyderabad, and we will take it further into the next level. We are in a university where we very robustly encourage internationalization of knowledge. We already have in place robust platforms for Indian Council for Cultural Relations, Study in India programs. Through these two platforms, we invite foreign students for master's and PhD programs. And we have interesting platforms such as Spark from MOE. And we have a lot of MOUs, functional MOUs with a lot of foreign universities. We have several flagship programs in Study India program. Several international universities in California, Duke, Dartmouth, Miami, etc., are already working with us. So these platforms are already in place. Student exchanges are already happening. We have several international study platforms in action, such as European Commission project, Erasmus project, Trace Transborder projects. Several of these projects are already in the pipeline. They are available for anyone to take with proper infrastructure, etc., etc. So it is important that we internationalize the education. That's the only way that we can progress. Education cannot be compartmentalized. Education cannot be put into simple or silos. In the current year, 2021, we have achieved a milestone by attracting very large number of applications, about 1,500 applications. About 139 students are already have opted to join us in different programs. They are from about 25 different countries. And there are other students in other programs here, such as master's and PhD programs. So you can see that this kind of activity can be implemented provided you have a system in place. You need to put a system in place. It is very important for universities to set up some units, dedicated units that focus on these activities. Unless there are dedicated units focusing on these activities will not thrive. This cannot be a part-time work. This is a full-time work. So internationalization should happen. It is happening. And we are also evolving now choice-based credit systems, which will allow students to take our credits into their countries and bring their credits into our university, etc., etc. So this twinning program is happening. And therefore, we can actually start offering combined degrees, combined PhD degrees, combined MSc degrees, etc., etc. It is important for us to connect with our past in the form of alumni. Our alumni are an important connect to the society. We have strengthened our alumni connect, and through alumni, we are reaching to different parts of the world. And this is a very important connect that most of the other universities also have to robustly strengthen. IITs are a very good model where this alumni connect has been significantly strengthened. And it is possible to set up Office of International Affairs, and one can set up Office of Global Education. And through these platforms, one should be able to internationalize our educational efforts so that other countries can come and learn, they can appreciate our value system, and wherever needed, we can learn their value systems and their cultural traits, etc., etc. So an interesting cross-fertilization should be possible. Now, this is all about the document and also about some simple details of how this implementation has been envisaged. As of now, this is in the planning stage. As a person, what do I feel about it? These are some personal thoughts. I feel the transformation plan must begin in our minds first. One must read the document, one must understand the document, appreciate the document, internalize the document. That is very important. Unless we internalize the document, we cannot transform our mind. So the transformation of the mind has to happen first. We should not keep waiting for an implementation plan from Delhi. We should start implementing this at our own level, at our own individual level, as teachers, as stakeholders. A plan is certainly required for ground level operation, but a plan is much more required in our mind first. NEP 2020 vision goes much beyond operational mode. It calls for a transformation of mindset first, though it is not explicitly stated in the document. I feel unless the mindset changes, the document cannot be realized. How do we do it at the ground level is the real challenge. How do we transform our minds? How do we transform the minds of students, teachers, and other researchers in the ecosystem? This, in my opinion, is the real challenge. Then implementation will happen on its own. If the transformation begins properly and the system aligns well, then the implementation is easier. I will touch upon how to bring about the change in the mind. In science education, as an example, I want to tell you certain anecdotes, certain examples of how to train the mind. In other realms of knowledge, there are other ways of doing it. We must prepare the minds towards asking very fundamental questions at a very early age, such as, what is the purpose of this creation? Is there a purpose? What is the nature of this creation? How do we understand this creation, if at all? How to acquire and assimilate knowledge towards this goal? Why do science? This is the question we have to ask. Why do arts? Why do literature? We must ask this question and get a tangible answer in our own minds and then do it. Do these different branches of knowledge feed into each other? I think they do. Finally, we should realize, all of us should realize that all knowledge streams are interconnected. This realization we should convey to our students. Our students must realize it. Then they will not be caught in barriers. Once they realize that knowledge cycle feeds into each other, then people will not develop in silos. So it is essentially a transformation of mind that one should do first. I would do it this way. When I'm teaching the students, I would do it this particular way. In my first lecture, this is what I would do. I would tell them about the universe. What is this universe? I will tell them this universe is made up of 100 billions of galaxies, hundreds of billions of galaxies. I would tell them each galaxy has about several billions of stars. Each star contains several billions of planets, and Earth is one such planet. We are simply a tiny part of the universe. We are simply a drop in the ocean. When did this universe begin? About 14 billion years ago. This is a hard number. We know it now. It is estimated that life actually began almost 6-7 billion years ago. Given the largeness of the universe and given the probability of life forming conditions very high, the life did form. Life will form because the probability of life forming is very high in our universe. Although life arose only 4 billion years ago, when did human beings arise? Only 2 million years ago. You will realize why I'm doing all this. Modern humans arose only 100-200,000 years ago. That means in this very ancient universe, we are very, very recent. We are the most recent entrants in the drama of life. And we are in a very, very small, tiny portion of the universe. Therefore, human being is almost insignificant in this universe. That is the point I want to drive. The point is that although we feel that we are at the top of the world, in the universe point of view, there is so much more to know. There is so much more to learn. We must become much more dwarfs when we start learning. This is the whole point. And this kind of value system we must give to our children. The universe is too fascinating to ignore. Therefore, we must study it. And how to study it? There is what is called method of science. This is the only way to use it. There is no other method for us. Method of science is a very powerful method. We must use the method of science to study the universe. We then learn about the complexity of the universe, and we learn that this complexity can be dissected, can be split up into different simple modules. Every complex system in this universe is made up of modules. There is what is called modularity in complex systems. If we understand the modules and we know how to put together these modules, the complex systems can be understood. This is a very important take home of the method of science. Just to give an example, in biology, where from I come, you take the top portion of this figure, human beings and chimpanzees and other mammals. We are extremely close to each other in our genome sequences. Our genotypes are 99.9% identical, similar. But when it comes to humanity, each one is different. No one is similar to the other. That means from identical conditions, as a phenotype, we are completely non-identical. Look at this situation. From total identity, you become totally non-identical. How does this happen in biology? This is a fascinating question that every student in science should wonder about. Genotypes are identical, but phenotypes are completely non-identical. Biology brings this about. Many complex systems bring this about. This is almost a chaotic system where small changes in the initial conditions, such as small changes in the genome sequence, make us extremely different. No human being is similar to the other. This is the nature of the design that we must convey to our students at some level. And towards the end, we must explain to them that all the processes in science, in the nature, in the universe are non-linear. Nothing goes linearly. What do I mean by that? Just as an example, illustrative example, I want to show this slide. Imagine the universe as black boxes. If input A comes in, output X emerges. If input B comes in, output Y emerges. When inputs A and B put together in a universe, in a biological system, the output that happens Z is never equal to X plus Y. Although A and B inputs are coming in together, the outcome of X plus the outcome of Y never happens. Z is always very different from X plus Y. This is what is non-linearity. And most of the universe is based on non-linearity principles. If we are able to convey this concept to young mind, that young mind will get excited about how does this happen? Can I learn the science behind it? Unless we awaken this kind of passion, the NEP 2020 will not happen, in my opinion. So at the end of it, finally, NEP 2020 must give rise to minds that conclude the thoughts in the following manner. How do the minds conclude? The minds will say, I still do not have all the answers to questions in this universe, but I am beginning to ask the right questions. When they start saying that I am beginning to ask the right questions, NEP 2020 has been realized, in my opinion. So this is the last slide, and I want to thank you, all of you, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for this very prudent, knowledgeable, informative talk. And if anybody has some doubt, want to know something more about this NEP, then you can ask, sir. Just only a couple of questions. Anybody?
If people are shy of asking, they can send me email questions also. I am ready to answer.
Yes, sir.
Them
There are
by
few.
email.
Okay, sure. That would be fine. Then. Because anyway, your presentation also. Yes.
I hope I was audible and my slides were visible.
Yes. Perfectly all right, sir.
Okay, thank you.
100%. Right. So we now move on to the second presentation.
Yes, Puspa. Professor Puspa Robin.
Yes, Pushpa. Right. So we now move on to the second presentation.
Yes, Puspa. Professor Puspa Robin.
Yes. Okay. Because we have to unmute, sir. No.
So when other question is coming, can I go ahead and ask the question?
Yeah, you can ask. Please.
Yeah. Professor Rao, wonderful lecture. I mean, it was a very good insight into the overall NEP framework. I mean, even though I'm going to speak in this, I also learned quite a bit from your lecture in the process. I was just curious to know, you pointed out some nice example from HCU's perspective and how IITs are already probably on the path to implementing certain portions of it, or they might have been implementing. But in terms of bringing changes or bringing benefits of NEP to other institutions which are not necessarily identified as a CFTRI, if I may call it, government nomenclature, what are the fundamental changes at a ground level that will have to be envisaged or that will have to be carried out? I mean, it's a loaded question, but then quick fix type of a thing that comes to your mind based on your experience, which some universities can do these small steps and can bring a long-term change in line with NEP. Any quick thoughts on that?
Quick thoughts is when you are partnering with an institution or an organization elsewhere, it is important that you identify human beings there. 1, 2, 3, 4. To connect with these human beings. Meeting of the minds is the first step. It's not the bureaucrats. Bureaucrats should come later. If I am going to some university, such as Princeton University or Yale University or MIT, I will know XYZ people there. I will talk to them and I will connect them to my partners here. So some dialogue has to happen. Human to human dialogue should happen. After that, you bring an MOU and ask them, please now interact and see where are the limits. So our first step is human contact. Then we bring in bureaucrats and MOU will happen, paper signing will happen, all that will happen.
Yeah.
So that's our model.
Thanks. Well said.
No, sir.
Yes.
Sir, excellent talk. Sir, I agree with you that we need to have. Hello?
Yeah, I'm hearing.
Yes, sir. We need to have dedicated teachers, sir. Yes. So this is like a chicken and egg situation.
Yes.
When we are all teachers, sir, but
Pushpa madam. Hello.
Dedicated teachers.
Pushpa madam,
Pushpa. When we are all teachers, sir, but
आप लास्ट में प्लीज.
Madam, I understood your question. Your question is how to make the teachers dedicated or committed to this process, correct? So what one should do is to set up interaction sessions by some peers who can act as mentors to large number of teachers and identify potentially some small number of teachers who are committed. If there are 100 teachers attending a workshop, there will be 5-10 teachers who are committed. Identify them. Invest all your energy in them. That's the model you go for. Are we connected?
No, sir, we are there. I think the hosts have some problem.
Okay. So, madam, what I was telling is you identify few teachers first, work on them, and then it'll expand slowly and steadily. I am not able to hear anybody. I don't know if there is anything happening.
You are audible, sir. You are audible.
Okay, thank you. Since we are under time pressure, maybe we should move on to the
hello, sorry, am I audible?
Yeah, please. Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
move
sir.
on, please. Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay.
You are audible, sir. You are audible.
Yeah. So, yeah. Hello, sorry, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Hello. So, PK Ja.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now you please proceed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please proceed. Okay. Oh, sir, there was some problem with the internet.
Yeah. No problem. You please continue now.
Okay, so now we have the second talk. We have changed the schedule a little bit. So we have now the second talk by Dr. Rana Singh, who is Vice-Chancellor and CEO at Sanskrit University. Dr. Rana Singh is a seasoned techno-business professional having 2 decades of experience in the domain of academics, research, teaching, quality assurance, and consulting. Dr. Singh is the former director of Army Institute of Management and Technology, Greater Noida. Earlier, he has served as director of institutional effectiveness at University of Jazeera, UAE. Then he moved to UAE in 2012 to provide training to banking, finance, and insurance professionals of UAE on invitation of Emirates Institute of Banking and Finance Studies, which is UAE's only institution permitted by central bank. Thereafter, he was working with Gulf medical universities. He has more than 20 years of experience in teaching. He was recently conferred with Bihar Gaurav Samman and B.R. Ambedkar National Award in 2018. So, please, sir, start your presentation.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. It's indeed a matter of pleasure, privilege, honor, and delight to be part of this special event organized by Faculty of Science and Internal Quality Assurance Cell of the Maharaja Sayaji University of Baroda in celebration of 1 year of NEP 2020. At the outset, I would like to express my thanks and gratitude to Professor Parimal Vyas, Vice-Chancellor of the university, for giving me an invitation to be part of this event. My esteemed Professor B.J. Rao, sir, Honorable Vice-Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, Professor Santosh J. Gharpure, who is Professor in charge and from Department of Chemistry, IIT Mumbai, and Professor B.S. Chakrabarti, sir, as well as Professor Haribhai Kataria ji. Eminent panelists, deans, directors, HODs, research scholars, and other eminent participants. A very warm good afternoon to all of you. At the outset, let me extend my congratulations to the team which considered the topic research, innovation, and ranking within bracket NEP 2020. So these 3 words were very, very important. And I conducted text-based qualitative research of our National Education Policy 2020. And I would like to share my findings that research gave 150. That means the word research could find itself 150 times, and the word innovation could find its presence for almost 25 times. And fortunately, unfortunately, the word ranking did not find a single mention in the National Education Policy 2020. However, let me quote one of the wonderful statements which says, life is a race, not a parking space. When I say life is a race, not a parking space, I really mean it, because today the universities and higher educational institutions are participating in the global race of research, publication, innovation, incubation, and commercialization. And we, as academicians, vice chancellors, and other eminent deans and HODs, faculty colleagues, it is our earnest, it should be our earnest endeavor, responsibility, commitment, passion to contribute towards research and innovation to accomplish the envisioned goals of the National Education Policy 2020 and the dreams of our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, who really wants to see the Indian universities and the higher educational institutions among the top universities across the world. Let me share the importance of today's agenda, research, innovation, and ranking. Well, let me share the findings of QS World University Rankings 2022. As per QS World University Rankings 2022, we could see only 35 Indian universities in total 1,300 universities which were ranked. And unfortunately, none of our Indian universities were there in top 100. Well, it's time for us to think what has gone wrong in our academic fraternity and education system, as well as in the academic delivery process, as well as in our focus on research and innovation, that none of the Indian universities could figure in the top 100 of the QS World University Rankings. More so, 3 of the Indian higher educational institutions could figure in the top 200 list. And fortunately, Indian Institute of Science was one of them, and it scored 100% marks, especially for the faculty, which we call it as for the research citations. Now, when we see that this is 5th year straight, when we see that IIT Bombay got the rank, I'm blessed to have one of the directors, one of the eminent professors from IIT Bombay today as one of the speakers. IIT Bombay ranked 117 and IIT Delhi ranked 185. And Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore ranked 186. So these were the just 3 Indian higher educational institutions which ranked among the top 200. So when we talk about the focus of research and innovation, they play a very, very important role in getting in among the top rankings. So I really congratulate the entire team which has chosen the topic research, innovation, and ranking. Now I'll come back to my qualitative research which I did with the National Education Policy, that the word research could see 150 times its presence. The word innovation could see almost 25 times, and the word ranking could not see a single time presence. Well, it is not at all important to talk about ranking, because if we focus at research and innovation, ranking will be ultimately the culmination of our focus on research and innovation. Well, it was a great pleasure listening to my previous speaker, VC sir. He said that India, earlier we were talking about knowledge, and we were talking about discussion. We were talking about Shastrarth from our Sanatan history, from our Vedic history. We were always into discussions and deliberations. We had little focus on knowledge creation. We were always focusing on discussions. Shastrarth was the keyword. India being the country which gave Nalanda University, Takshila, and many such gifts to the world, including Zero, including the first civilization to the world. Now, when we are lagging behind in the list of universities across the world, research and innovation play a very, very significant role. And now I'll come straight to our national education policy. Wherever the word research has been mentioned, how and why this has been mentioned, and how we as university academicians, we can play our important role in accomplishing the envisioned goals of the national education policy. Now, when I said 150 times the word has got its mention, I'll discuss all of them so that we can start talking about how research can play an important role. Now, we talked about academic bank of credits, which will be established to facilitate, which has been established already to facilitate the transfer of credits. Now, most of the focus in the times to come has to be on creation of multidisciplinary education and research universities. So the clear focus is to have universities having multidisciplinary education, and they would be called as MERUs, MERUs. So all universities will be established with a commitment to have two-pronged focus on education and research, with a focus on creating and delivering quality at par with IITs, IIMs. And all these universities would focus on delivering both academics as well as conducting research and furthering excellence. Now, the next mention has been in terms of the creation of National Research Foundation, and this would be ultimately fostering strong research culture and building research capacity. Now, these two dimensions are very, very important. First, the creation of research culture in higher educational institutions, and secondly, the development, and we talk about building research capacity and sustaining research capacity, developing it on a sustained basis. So this is very, very important, and this is going to really take the research contributions of India to the Indian continent as well as to the rest of the world to newer heights. And I'll talk about the statistics, how in India our contribution of GDP towards research is well below 1% in comparison to other developed economies, which is close to the level of 2 to 5%. Let's say 4+% of Korea, 2+% of US. So we'll talk about it. So building research capacity has been one very, very important dimension, and we as vice chancellors, it should be our earnest endeavor to focus on building the research capacity. Now, the next focus was in terms of catalyzing the quality academic research in all fields. This has to be the new focus of the National Research Foundation. So the research has to be given a catalytic boost and an exponential growth in all Indian universities, so that our faculty members and students at undergraduate, postgraduate, and doctorate level can really give exponential contributions to the world of research. Now, the next research mentioned in our national education policy has been to talk about that with the emergence of the epidemics and pandemic, we at the university level, we have to focus on collaborative research, especially pertaining to infectious disease management, and to focus on development of world-class vaccines as a culmination of our research and clinical research, and focus on the resultant social issues which can heighten the need of multidisciplinary learning. So it's time for us to focus on healthcare management and healthcare research so that we can focus on the longevity of life and to provide world-class healthcare research facilities to India as well as rest of the world. And more so, when we talk about why India, which gave Nalanda, Vikramshila, Vallabhi, which were one of the highest standards of multidisciplinary teaching and research in ancient times, and we as Indians, we were hosting scholars and students from different backgrounds and countries from all over the world. Why we are lagging behind? So when we created world-class scholars, we gave Charak, Susrut, Aryabhat, many more like them. But why in current times, most of the research is coming from the Western world? So it's time for us to give a catalytic boost to the research in Indian higher educational system, as well as to the all the research in the Indian universities, whether it is pure research, interdisciplinary research, clinical research, transdisciplinary research, and so on and so forth. Now, we as Indians, we have to carry the rich legacies of the domain knowledge and the research tradition of the yesteryears, and it has to be nurtured and to take in to newer heights so that we become a Vishwaguru once again by the virtue of becoming or producing world-class research at UG, PG, as well as at doctoral level. Now, the teachers, they have to become the fundamental or the core epicenter of academics and research in the country. And here is the time for us to create world-class infrastructure, world-class faculty development institutions, and world-class team of faculty members who are committed to the cause of research and development and who can focus on new incubations and other similar allied areas. I would be happy to share. I was just conducting some basic research before I thought I'll start my deliberations. Half an hour back, we could see that India's list of unicorns, unicorn, I mean companies which gain billion-dollar market capitalization. So India had 58 unicorns. India had 58 unicorns out of a total of 650 unicorns of the world. So we could add the next one. Half an hour back, I could come across the news that Upgrad became the 59th Indian unicorn, which is a culmination of intensive research and innovation by academicians, practitioners, and people from the corporate world to create an Indian academic. This is one of the ed tech companies. When I say ed tech, it is combination of education and technology, which brings the commitment of academicians, technology professionals, and corporate practitioners to come together to make sure that we are doing innovative delivery of academics and research so that our students get highest degree of pleasure in the process of teaching, learning, and assessment, and their engagement level is very, very high. We at Sanskriti University, we are proud to be working very closely with Upgrad, which has just become a unicorn after a funding from IIFL, and this became the 59th Indian unicorn. And let me tell you, with 59th Indian unicorn, we as India, we have just 9% of market share in the world unicorns with 17.68. Just before giving this deliberation, I was calculating India's percentage in terms of population. So we have 17.68% of world population and just 9% of unicorns. So we are close to almost half the number of unicorns of the world if we take it on a pro rata basis of our population. So we as universities, we have to focus on creating world-class incubation centers wherein the research and patents can see the form of incubation and creation of companies which can become a unicorn and which can get a market capitalization of more than $1 billion US. So this I'll share with you. A couple of years back, I had gone to Rajasthan to deliver a keynote address in a technology conference, and then I had delivered that India has just 5% of the world unicorns out of close to around 18% population. So in the last 2 years, we have moved from 4.8% to almost 9% of the world unicorns. And India is heading towards having almost 100 unicorns by 2023. With our sincere efforts, sincere implementation of the national education policy, it would be a great effort. Now we move on to the next mention pertaining to research, that outstanding research will be a core requisite for outstanding education and development. So here is the time when the universities have to make it a core requisite, because if we want to improve the quality of academic delivery and the education and development of our students, outstanding quality of research has to be a core requisite. Now, let me share with you, Government of India, Ministry of Education, from July 2021 has made PhD as a prerequisite for faculty colleagues to join the university system. So PhD being a prerequisite to join the university system, this was one, and outstanding research has been talked about, a core requisite for outstanding education. So it's important for teachers to conduct world-class research to become a world-class academician. So this is very, very important. And now the national education policy has also talked about the continuous review of faculty members and their progress on the basis of their sustained research work and regular assessment by educational experts. So we, as academicians and university, we are at the crossroads of academic delivery, wherein we have to make performance appraisal of faculty members focused on their consistent progress based on their sustained research, and regular assessment will be done by their publications, and not just publications, what has been its overall impact, and impact not just by looking at the impact factor of the journals, but also looking at what has been its overall social impact. And Ministry of Education and its various constituent bodies have started focusing on what has been the overall focus of the researcher, and especially the doctoral researchers, what has been their overall impact on the society, the societal impact. So that's the next important dimension. Now, the other part of it which we are talking about, the other research mentioned, has been in terms of the early childhood care and education. So the latest research findings pertaining to early childhood care and education, they have talked about that, well, most of the kids during their 3 to 8 year old period, lot of development during the initial stages, imparting the skills. So we have talked about in school system, now the students are likely to be imparted with the basic skills, especially the vocational skills, so that when they come to the higher education, they are in a better position to have their overall orientation towards research. Now, when we are talking about the other mention of research findings, this talks about that if the students are given nutritious breakfast, that can be particularly very, very productive for the study of cognitively more demanding subjects. So it's important for us as university administrators to create an ecosystem wherein the students get very, very nutritionally hygienic food, so that they are in a position to contribute towards more cognitive learning process, and it acts as a catalytic boost. Now, most of the other research findings are pertaining to the school education. I would like to just move forward, particularly pertaining to, now, when we talk about curriculum, NCERT will be focusing more and more, particularly, it will conduct research and document world-class curriculum so that the students coming out from the school system are thoroughly prepared to take up the challenges of higher education and contribute to the envisioned goals of national education policy, wherein we as higher educational academicians, we are supposed to create round-shaped professionals having domain knowledge, skills, competencies, and similar understanding of constitutional values and social equity, respect for others, and various other allied dimensions. So pedagogy has to be made diverse. More and more focus would be towards creating innovative pedagogy, and research has to be taken care of. Now, we all know that lifelong learning is fourth goal of SDG. So the focus is to create research and those institutions which would create excellence in academics and research, and those who are among the top ranked universities rated by the accreditation bodies, they are the ones who would have the facility to create lifelong learning, and those universities will create and sustain the same level of academic excellence while delivering the process of academic delivery as a part of lifelong learning, which is the fourth goal of SDGs, which we talk about. So now, there has been an additional focus on conducting research pertaining to students having differential abilities of learning. I'm not using the word disability intentionally. So students have differential orientation of learning. So we need to conduct research and to focus on how we can provide continuous support to such students so that they are able to have similar understanding of the various concepts. Now, there's been another major focus wherein the universities will not have multiple understandings. Like currently we have deemed university, we have affiliating universities, we have non-affiliating universities, technical universities. So the times are gone are the times. Now we'll have major focus on creation of multidisciplinary education and research universities with very high focus on research. And all the colleges, especially the two types of colleges which we talk about, especially the affiliated colleges will have the focus on getting autonomous grading from the accreditation body and become independent in a phased manner. So what has really happened is that the research has taken a backseat in many universities, and that has been the reason the research funding has been also getting a backseat. So now I'll talk about the other major mentions pertaining to the focus. So integrity of research is becoming very, very important. And University Grants Commission has really given strict and stringent guidelines pertaining to the conduct of integrity. And that's why the thesis, they are to be evaluated, and plagiarism has to be ensured well below the stipulated limits. And the appointments and career progression has to be on the basis of teaching, research, and service. More importantly, the integrity of research contribution is also to be focused, and that's very, very important. So that is going to get prominence. Now, next focus on research is to, well, we already talked about the establishment of National Research Foundation for funding all the outstanding peer-reviewed research and to actively seed the research in universities and colleges. So all universities of different types will become a single categorization of universities. So no more deemed universities, technical universities, etc. They will all have similar categorization of just a university, and NRF, National Research Foundation, will be catalyzing the research by giving seed research to the universities and colleges. So that is, now we'll also talk about the innovation dimension because I think my time is running short. So the focus of Indian tradition has always been to create well-rounded and innovative individuals. And that's important to understand that we have to have innovative individuals who can provide innovative solutions to the existing problems in the current times, as well as for impending problems of the future. So innovation is very, very important. And let me share with you in brief what UAE government did to improve the focus on innovation. At undergraduate level, UAE government made it mandatory that all programs of UAE will have one dedicated course on innovation and entrepreneurship, and all the teachers doing academic delivery were invited at one common place. And we had faculty members coming from Stanford University to train the faculty members how to teach the faculty, how to teach it to the students, the focus on innovation. So it's very, very important for us to understand, to enhance the focus on innovation. And the new education policy has enhanced the focus of improving the culture of empowerment and autonomy to the faculty members to innovate. And we have to gradually phase out the system of affiliated colleges over a period of 15 years through a system of graded autonomy. And it has to be taken in the challenge mode. So all the colleges have to become autonomous in phased manner and to focus on research and innovation. So no more, and this has been done because in most of the government universities, it used to take 2 years to almost a decade to make the redundant curriculum contemporary. So that's why all the colleges are gradually being empowered to make themselves contemporary in terms of curriculum, in terms of adopting new pedagogy, new technologies, as well as focusing on innovation. So it's very, very important for us to understand how the new education policy is focusing on innovation. Now, let us understand the added emphasis on STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. They have always showed positive learning outcomes, and that has really improved the creativity and innovation. So now, with the implementation of national education policy, the colleges and universities will have more and more focus and emphasis on STEM education. And when we talk about creating round-shaped knowledge and skill-oriented professionals, the students can have specialization in one or more areas, and they can also take subjects from other areas as electives by sincere implementation of choice-based credit system with in concomitance with LOCF, which we talk about learning outcomes curriculum framework. So it's important for us to understand that implementation of STEM education has always showed positive learning outcomes, including increased creativity and innovation, improvement in critical thinking and higher order thinking capabilities, as well as the problem solving abilities of the students, their teamwork, their communication skills, and more in-depth learning and mastery of curricula across fields. It has also improved in terms of their overall social and moral awareness, apart from their general engagement and enjoyment of learning. So this is very important. So in the times to come, we'll have more emphasis on STEM education to enhance the overall creativity and innovation among the students. When we talk about holistic and multidisciplinary education, it's important for us as academicians to make our curriculum innovative and flexible. And that's why more and more focus is on more and more electives so that the students can choose the subjects and courses of their choice. And all the higher educational institutions shall include the credit-based courses and projects in the areas of community engagement and service, environmental education, and value-based education. So these three areas are very, very important, and the academic institutions and universities have to focus on credit-based courses, I repeat, in the area of community engagement and service, environmental education, and value-based education, with equal emphasis on skill education. And skill education is also very, very important, environment education. So it's time for us to reorient, redefine, and customize our curriculum so that environment education is also going to be part, with focus on the climate change, pollution, waste management, sanitation, conservation of biological diversity, as well as management of biological resources and biodiversity, forest and wildlife conservation, and sustainable development and living. So it's important for us to focus on value-based education, which will include the development of humanistic, ethical, constitutional, and universal human values of truth, righteous conduct, peace, love, non-violence, scientific temper, citizenship values, and life skills together. So it's important for us to focus more on STEM education, which will boost the overall orientation of creativity of the students. We have to focus on research and innovation by setting up incubation center. I'm glad to share that Sanskriti University has established incubation center with support of the state government. We are also in the process of setting up of technology incubator center, and more emphasis has to be on technology development center, as well as to create center of excellence in frontiers area of research, to focus more and more on industry academic linkages. So we recently created some programs with CII, more and more focus on interdisciplinary research, including humanities and social sciences research. So it's important for us to create centers of excellence, interdisciplinary research, and so on. Also to focus on IPRs. So it is very, very important to promote innovation among the student communities so that students and faculty come together and focus on new innovations. The students from engineering at our campus, they created some hybrid cars, solar cars, and various other innovative products and services, which is really transforming the mission and the culture of research and innovation at our university. We have also participated in ARIA. I'll talk about the ranking. So I think I'm left with a few more minutes. So we'll talk about now the rankings. So ranking, as a matter of my text-based research, did not see its place in the national education policy. However, I'll talk about India's one of the most coveted ranking, which we talk about, Atal ranking, on the basis, we call it as ARIIA, Atal ranking of institutions on the basis of innovation and innovation advancements. So we talk about ARIA rankings. So now let's talk about the major focus of ARIA rankings. We have 7 parameters, and these parameters actually warrant the universities and institutions to conduct more and more activities and to structure more and more programs on IPR. I'm glad to share that today we had IPR boot camp in association with ASSOCHAM, which is India's leading industry body, to focus on more and more programs of innovation, startup, and entrepreneurship. I'm glad to share that we have been conducting various entrepreneurship programs with ADII and NSBUD. We have to conduct series of programs related to IPR, entrepreneurship, and they should have participation and representation of students and faculty members in various events pertaining to IPR and entrepreneurship. Now, it's also important for us that universities must have an annual budget for research and innovation and for startup funding, and it should be part of their income and expenditure. So universities must make a significant contribution of their budget towards promoting and supporting innovation and startup in the campus. And we at Sanskriti University, we have been committed towards funding the startups of coming from the students body and the faculty body on the campus. And the focus has to be high on creation of pre-incubation and incubation infrastructure. So our Honorable Prime Minister, under the aegis of Niti Aayog, has created Atal Incubation Mission AIM, which has been funding almost to the tune of 10 crores to the universities and institutions for strengthening the incubation infrastructure. So the focus has to be on successful innovation and startups and funding, and the expenses and income from the innovation and startups also have to be increased. So it's not just we create startups, we have to focus on increasing their income from those startups. We have to have courses on innovation, IPR, and entrepreneurship. So it's time for the universities to have more and more innovative courses for research and innovation, IPR, and entrepreneurship development, so that we are able to rank better within India in ARIA rankings and rank among the top-notch universities of the world in QS rankings, Times Higher Educational rankings, and other international rankings. Now, the maximum, the fifth parameter of ARIA ranking talks about what has been the total number of intellectual property rights granted and what has been the total number of papers published. So I'm glad to share that we at Sanskriti University, we have published more than 1,500 research papers and filed more than 450 patents with the Indian government, so that we are ranking among some of the best universities of the country. So it's time for the universities to focus more and more on research and publications, filing more and more intellectual property rights, and to focus on commercialization of the technologies innovated on campus. So with these words, I take this opportunity to thank the organizers once again for conducting such a wonderful event. And thank you very much. Have a wonderful day ahead and look forward to more meaningful sessions. Thank you and thanks a lot. Over to you, sir. We can take questions in case if there is any.
Okay, so we now, after thanking Dr. Singh for his very prudent, knowledgeable informative talk, we now move to our third talk, and that is by Dr. Santosh Gharpure. Yes, he is there. So just briefly, I will introduce him because of the shortage of time. So Professor Gharpure is professor in charge at IIT's Bombay's Technology Incubation Center and also the Perfumery Chair Professor. Prior to that, he was associate professor at IIT Madras. After completing his postdoc at Indiana University, he did his PhD from ISC Bangalore. Dr. Gharpure is a recipient of INSA Medal for Young Scientists. He was also awarded IIT Madras Young Faculty Recognition Award for his contribution in teaching and research in year 2010. He received BM Birla Science Prize in Chemistry for the year 2010. He was also selected as one of the Theme Chemistry General Awardees of year 2013. He was selected as Themis Medicare UICT Diamond Jubilee Distinguished Fellow in Pharmaceutical Science for the year 2015 and 16 of ICT Mumbai. He was selected for the award of Chemical Research Society of India Bronze Medal in 2018. He is very recently he has been admitted as a fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry, and he is member of International Advisory Board of European Journal of Organic Chemistry. So I will now request Dr. Gharpure to start his talk.
Thank you, Professor Zha, for those kind words of introduction. Let me join other speakers in thanking the organizers for giving this opportunity to interact with you all. As the introduction said, I am a chemist, but what I sometimes jokingly call as occupational hazard, I am also part of this innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem of IIT Bombay by virtue of being professor in charge of our technology business incubator. So when Prasanna called me that can you give a seminar on national education policy and innovation, I readily agreed, because that also gives me an opportunity to put the things in perspective, what are happening in the landscape of innovation and entrepreneurship in academic setup, particularly academic setups like IIT. Share our experience, what we have been doing over the last almost 2 decades now, and can that learning, whatever we have obtained over the decade, be shared with the other institutions, the younger students, faculty colleagues, and can that be useful in changing few things in this domain? Can we take some baby steps in improving the overall landscape? And new education policy is an important milestone when we are talking about changing the landscape when it comes to the education in the country. So the title I have given for my talk is essentially NEP and innovation. So I will be focusing more on the innovation aspect of it, and even more important from the point of view of how the emphasis on innovation and entrepreneurship that is envisaged in NEP can actually change the scenario. And that I would try to demonstrate it through an example, because many a times what happens is we hear the documents, main key ingredients, policies. NEP itself is a fantastic document. I mean, very inspirational document. And some people always have this concern. The lofty goals that these kind of exercises set for universities and institutions, can they be really translated into ground? If not in totality, but at least in spirit, can we really take those baby steps so that we are able to achieve at least, if not fully, at least partially certain goals which are set out by this kind of policies. And I thought that best thing is to share an experience from an institute. So what I will do is, I will initially talk about the national education policy, its key highlights with respect to the innovation, how things will change or are expected to change from my own perspective, and give you example of SIGN, which is the business incubator of IIT Bombay, how we do things and how some of it may find correlation or correlation, some understanding, some learning for us in what is embedded in NEP. So that's the motivation for the way I have arranged my particular talk. And that's why I have done the little bit of a pun here, that I am saying that NEP and innovation, essentially it is sign of times to come, because we do see exciting future ahead of us. Okay. The NEP document itself, and we have heard about it from the last 2 speakers, Professor Rao, Professor Singh, who elaborated in detail. So I don't have to go through it again. But from a personal perspective, what I found is the opening statement of the NEP, which is talking about education. It clearly spells out the motivation for it. It says that education is fundamental for achieving full human potential. And when we say full human potential, we are not just talking about individual. We are talking about developing human potential for equitable and just society and promoting national development. It is not individual specific. Yes, individuals have to become better to achieve the common goal, which is national development. India, in fact, in 2015 adopted the Agenda for Sustainable Development 2030. The Sustainable Development Goals, as they are called as Goal 4 or SGD 4, essentially India seeks to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education, and in the process promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Again, this is a very, very ambitious goal to be achieved in a decade's time. I mean, you are talking about 2015, so probably that time we had 1.5 decade. From today, we are talking about less than a decade. And the only way you can actually bring about this kind of ambitious change is try not to do more of the same thing, but try to do things differently. And the way to do things differently essentially required that we had to overhaul our education system. We have to give a new paradigm shift in the education system. So the entire education system, it was thought, needs to be reconfigured. And that's the motivation of NEP as it is outlined in the document. It tries to reconfigure this particular system to support and foster learning in order to achieve the critical targets and goals of the sustainable development. And this has to be done by 2030. When we are talking about this particular area, essentially what we are going to be asking a question is, this is something which gets asked multiple number of times. And what's the purpose of education? Something which NEP also has asked. Now, if you look at this particular question, different people will give different answers for this particular question. And one of the answers which is quite often present there is basically the main purpose of the education is to give the young the things they need in order to develop in an orderly sequential way into members of society. Now, this from an English point of view is not very clear for many people straight away. In a simplistic term, some people actually say that, you know what, the basic aim of education is nothing but to create employable youth in a very simplistic term, right? And this is a very, very simple goal of education, that you want to create employable youth. But national education policy, what I noticed, actually is not just satisfied with creating employable youth. What it endeavors to do, what it encourages us to do is go beyond this. What it tells us is that the purpose of education system is to develop good human beings capable of rational thought and action, not just thought process, but action also has to be backed behind these thoughts. They should be possessing compassion and empathy, courage and resilience. Youth should have scientific temper. They should have creative imagination, and above all this should happen with sound ethical mooring and values. This is absolutely critical if you want to build a society which is a society for 21st century. So NEP essentially says that to create youth, not just who is employable, but the one who will be engaged in a productive and who will be engaged, productive and contributing citizen, right? For building an equitable, inclusive and plural society. So it clearly defines that the goal is that if you want to develop the youth who will harbor the change in the country from the sustainable goals point of view, you need youth of this type, a citizen who is envisaged by our constitution. Okay, that's the motivation, that's the purpose of education according to NEP. And this is something which is going beyond the simple basic requirement that they should be employable. And I will actually touch upon this aspect, employability aspect. Okay, and how new education policy actually prods us to go beyond this. Now, NEP itself, as was pointed out, is a huge document, and it encompasses all the various aspects of education system, right from the child entering the education system at the age of 3, all the way to the graduation from the university. What I'm going to be focusing on in my talk is focusing on this segment where the higher education part is being dealt with. And if we really want to achieve these goals, achieve the motivation of the education system as has been outlined, our universities and colleges will have to do things differently. And that is where the NEP actually first identifies challenges. Because if you want to bring in change, first you need to understand what are the real challenges in front of us. And if you understand the problems out in front of us, we may be able to come up with solutions, address those in a systematic manner, so that we will be able to arrive at the final target, final goal in a much more concerted fashion, at a faster clip, taking everybody along. So the challenges which we all are aware of, and NEP actually outlines from the higher education perspective, is that our higher education ecosystem is highly fragmented. There is too much emphasis on learning by perhaps memorizing, knowledge-based learning, rather than development of cognitive skills and learning outcomes. When we go to the classroom, very rarely are you told that at the end of this particular class, this is what you should be able to do with the content that has been delivered to you. We are more worried about delivery of the content, assimilating that content, learning that without outcomes. In fact, this is my experience, and I can completely relate with you, being part of the board of studies member for some of the colleges, the newly autonomous colleges from different universities. What I find is their syllabi are fantastic, but what is missing many a times is the clear-cut thought process on learning outcomes. And that is where I think students miss out. Despite having very good programs on paper, the actual outcome turns out to be not commensurate with what is envisioned initially, because there is just not enough emphasis on developing learning outcomes, developing the cognitive skills in the learner. Okay, so that is one challenge which is there, which NEPs suggest that we need to address. Other problem that we have is that our system is many a times, especially university system, is quite rigid. We separate the disciplines, we separate the subjects, we have too much of specialization many a times. And then we break down the students into narrow areas of study, right? So we don't get possibilities where students can actually learn across the disciplines. We have too many boundaries, and seamless moving from one boundary to another boundary actually is strongly discouraged by our existing system to some extent. I wouldn't say 100%, but there are challenges with that. And NEP tries to kind of see if we can address those kind of issues. And then there are other challenges as well, right? Limited access, particularly in socio-economically disadvantaged areas, with few HEIs, higher education institutions, that teach in local language. So that is a big challenge in certain domains. And that is something which can be easily addressed if there is a will. That identification of the problem is something which I like NEP. I like the NEP's approach about that. They have clearly identified head on what are the challenges. Not to mention that there is a limited autonomy for the institutions as well as for the teachers. There is an inadequate mechanism for merit-based career management. Part of the reason why faculty and institutional leaders are not able to develop is because there is no clear-cut mechanism to recognize performance. We end up ticking all the boxes, but not translate those into really ground level work, right? So these are some of the challenges which leads to motivational issues. And when the most motivational issues are there, the outcomes also won't be commensurate with the expectations not of the institute, but rather of the society. And that's where the gap starts building up. So this is a real challenge which many of us are probably aware at the ground level. Lesser emphasis on research at most universities and colleges. Part of the reason is perhaps the funding which is available or lack of it. And then there is a lack of competitive peer-reviewed research funding across the disciplines. So that is another challenge which is there. Suboptimal governance and leaderships of HEIs. NEP is quite honest in identified this also as a challenge. And ineffective regulatory system, large affiliating universities resulting in low standards and undergraduate education. So these are the challenges outlined by the NEP. And it just doesn't outline the challenges. It also tries to bring in some key changes according to NEP. If we bring in certain key changes, maybe we will be able to not only address this challenge, but overcome them and achieve the goals that have been set out at the beginning of the document. So what are the key changes which are sought? The key changes are moving towards higher educational system consisting of large multidisciplinary universities and colleges. Now, this is one point you will see that in next 2-3 slides is going to repeat itself. And this is something which I have deliberately not edited out from this document. The emphasis continuously is that we want to move to large multidisciplinary universities and colleges, and not the ones which are having silos, not which are focused on only certain domains. Even if I look at IIT, for example, from one point of view, when they were built as the ones which will be imparting engineering education. So there was a time back in history, maybe 4, 5, 6 decades ago, when the IIT started, the focus was purely on engineering. The other departments were almost considered as support departments, and not much emphasis was given on doing research, doing cutting edge technology development, but more on undergraduate education. I'm talking about when the IITs were set up. Maybe for that time, that was the right kind of a thing to establish an institution. But as the things progress over the decades, at least IITs, and I will show you through the data later on, that they did change their initial mandate and expanded it. And this is something which is very, very important if we want to achieve the goals laid out in the NEP, that you have to go from a system which are silos driven, specialization driven, into universities and institutes which are large, consisting of multidisciplinary approach, basically, right? So you should have departments across the disciplines. Moving towards a more undergraduate education, which is also of multidisciplinary nature. Moving towards faculty and institutional autonomy. This is very, very important. The autonomy does bring in a lot of positive changes. We have seen that within our country's context as well. And that is something which is a key change that is envisaged. You have to revamp curricula, pedagogy, assessment, and student support to enhance student experience. And this is one aspect which most of you would agree, that assessment, for example, is something which many of you would realize that we traditionally were focusing on rote learning. Now we need to change that pattern. We need to assess students based on not just how much memory they have, but how much understanding they have, and how they can actually not just reproduce whatever they have learned, but also apply that knowledge in solving problems, synthesize questions. Even to that level, we should be able to take the student to in our assessment. And that's one of the key changes which NEP envisages to bring in the change in our system. Reaffirming the integrity of faculty and institutional leadership position through merit appointments and career progression based on teaching, research, and service. So those are the changes. And then to sum up, a couple more points. The one which particularly I liked, I won't go through each and every one. NRF was talked about by earlier colleagues as well, so I won't overemphasize that again, but that's a very important change. Light but tight. I think that's a key word in this particular thing. The regulation that we have should be light and tight. We have too much of regulation, but none of it gets really enforced. But what NEP actually envisages is that you should have a single regulator for higher education. You should have, perhaps, I read it between the line that light but tight means lesser boxes to tick, but those boxes will be looked at very seriously. So that's the type of thing which I would think about light but tight nomenclature from my perspective. And that is what I would see, that when implementation happens, that this light but tight becomes the driving force behind these key changes that we are talking about. And open distance learning is another aspect which I think has been accelerated thanks to pandemic, because this was almost enforced on all of us even before NEP actually gets implemented. We are looking at open distance learning already, and looks like that slowly and surely we all are gearing towards building the infrastructure for distance learning programs. And I think this is one blessing in disguise of these difficult period, wherein you may be able to bring in more equity in distribution of the knowledge and sharing that IT, your telecommunication technology, internet has brought in. Technology is a great leveler, and I think no better time to realize that now than before, because a student can be sitting anywhere in the country, and she could be listening to the teachers from somewhere else within the country, or even globally anywhere else, right? So that's the power of technology, and it has kind of brought everybody in the same platform today. And that's something which is remarkable, which is already envisaged in NEP, but to some extent it has got accelerated. Again, I'm trying to bring to the solutions which NEP has proposed in terms of bringing change here. Basically, what it says is to end the fragmentation of higher education system. It wants to transform higher education institutions into large multidisciplinary universities, colleges, and HEI clusters or knowledge hubs, each of which will aim to have 3,000 or more students. So it is trying to kind of bring consolidation into this fragmented system, bring in more HEI clusters, multidisciplinary universities. And this is the word, if I were to search this particular word, like what Professor Singh pointed out, that innovation came 25 times, this multidisciplinary universities probably came at least 10 times in this particular document, because that is, I think, one of the key ideas. And I think it is important. It is important to emphasize this particular aspect if you want to bring in real change in the education system, because without bringing in multidisciplinarity, innovation is less likely to happen. And I will actually talk about that particular aspect through science example as we go further towards the second half of my talk, that why this multidisciplinarity is absolutely critical. A university will mean a multidisciplinary institution of higher learning that offers undergraduate and graduate programs with high quality teaching, research, and community engagement. And if you see this particular vision, which is laid out by NEP, what it actually tells you is that universities should not just be focusing on research, but they should be talking about undergraduate and graduate programs, both simultaneously, teaching and research combinedly, and more importantly, all these should have relevance to society. So community engagement is a very, very important parameter. And that is one change that has been emphasized in NEP according to me. Whatever we do should have relevance at the end of the day to the community that we cater to. And if we are not able to make that impact, if we are not able to bring that change to the community through the teaching and research that we have done, I think the whole goal of education will not be met. And that is one key takeaway for me from the NEP education. Now, if we want to bring in the engagement with the society, it cannot be done with only fundamental knowledge. Don't get me wrong, fundamental knowledge is absolutely necessary and universities are expected to be doing that in any case. However, what is envisaged is you need to go one step further and actually innovate. Now, when we talk about innovation, when we talk about entrepreneurship, the way the NEP pursues this is in the following manner. So what it says is that towards a more holistic and multidisciplinary education, we have to go beyond the STEM subject. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, these are there. These are important and their importance cannot be overemphasized. But if you want to bring change in the society, simply having the STEM, emphasis on STEM alone is not going to be sufficient. You will have to also emphasize more on social sciences along with STEM. And that awareness is very, very important to be brought in the learner so that the impact can actually be the developments in the STEM subjects can actually be taken to the society to bring about positive change. And that requires some understanding of social science, and more such engagement is what is envisaged, which is important if you want to bring in innovation to bring the change in the society. HEIs should focus more on research and innovation by Technology Development Center. So what it suggests that go away a little bit from the typical departmental structures, which is what we call silos, compartmentalization of subjects, but try to bring in technology development. So wherein the basic basics of the subject are actually taken to the applied side? Can you take that research which is developed in the lab to bring in change about in the society, in the community? So you will need to develop technology. For that, you need to develop more technology centers. You need centers in frontier area of research, because the science and technology is changing very rapidly. AI and ML kind of ideas, which were perhaps not as common in the regular day-to-day life talking, today have become prevalent. They touch all our lives. So industry academia linkages is another aspect where we have been talking about it, but can we bring that aspect more strongly? The way to do it partly is that in addition to the department, we should also focus on setting up incubation centers within the higher academic institutions, higher educational institutions. So HEIs must set up incubation centers. Okay, and how does one go about it is what I'm going to touch upon a little later. Like I said, through science story, HEIs are expected to take lead to undertake research in the areas of infectious diseases, virology, diagnostics, vaccinology, and other relevant areas. Now, this point cannot be overemphasized in the current scenario. This may look like a subset of the bigger challenge, but the way one can look at it is that these are the domains which are directly related to the society. So any research that we undertake, if it is going to be bringing in change, positive change in the community, I think that is something which is strongly encouraged at a philosophical level, encouraged at a fundamental level, encouraged as a funding level as well. And that is something which will happen probably as we go further with national funding agencies being set up, single funding body, which will also look at probably this aspect in any of the research proposal. Does this have a component wherein the basic research can also be augmented in bringing in societal change? And this is something which is already happening if you look at some of the funding programs which are coming up. What is the vision? Vision is that HEIs should create a vibrant community to foster innovation with student community, whether it is in the research labs or research organization. I think that is something which is very, very important when we talk about that. Now, if all this has to be kind of talked about, you will have to see some transformational changes in our educational system. Okay, what NEP tries to say is that we have been doing things in certain ways. So traditional education institutions, for example, were focusing on teaching and research. Don't get me wrong, they were doing that. But the method of doing it for teaching was largely dissemination of knowledge. And that is where this problem of rote learning sometimes creeps in. Maybe that was not the vision, but that's what actually started happening to some extent in our teaching. And when it came to research, we all were happy publishing our papers. Again, don't get me wrong, this is important aspect. Creation of knowledge is important. But how long can we keep doing creation of knowledge for the sake of knowledge? While it is absolutely critical to do that, somewhere one has to also try and address this question that as we create knowledge, can I take it to the next level? And that next level is nothing but using that knowledge to bring change in the society in a positive way. Can the quality of life of my fellow citizens be improved by doing the research that I'm doing in the laboratory? So if we were to implement NEP in its true spirit, what transformational changes that should happen in the new age academia, as I would call it, is that teaching will now change to experiential learning. This is what is probably envisaged by the makers of this particular document, that you learn through experience. You do hands-on things, not just read and visualize, but learn by hands-on experience. You learn by sharing with your fellow colleagues. So more emphasis on sharing your experience with the fellow student so that you both learn in the process. And that process of doing things is very, very important, right? So you learn by experience, you share your experience, you go through a process, and then try and see if you can generalize the learned principles to a larger setting. And the ultimate goal will be whatever knowledge you have acquired, whatever learning you have from your experience, can you apply to solve the problems? Can you apply this knowledge to bring in change around you? And that's where research also will change from a simple knowledge creation. That knowledge creation will be augmented, supplemented, added on to research with purpose. So while you continue to create knowledge, adding to the repertoire of information and the knowledge, you also do research with purpose to create an impact on the society. So applied research will start getting more and more prominence as we go further with NEP. So again, how the old school and new age academia would change. So old school, we always talked about teacher. The teacher was being part of a department in an institution. Students were going to classroom and laboratory, doing research in the laboratory if you are at a research institution, doing PhD and so on. To take care of your students' all-round development, there were hobby clubs. And then there were placement cells, because at the end of the day, student who is graduating from an institution also needs to find a job. And that is where the placement cells kind of entity would come in. That is what is the old school model. And we are not dismantling it, but we are adding newer dimensions in the new age academia based on the NEP, according to me. And that is, a teacher will also have a counterpart in the mentor. So a student will not be just a student, but somebody who would be able to think at a higher level, and that student will be mentored by maybe a teacher, maybe a fellow student. Typically, teacher will now don multiple hats and will be expected to become also the mentor. Now, departments which are teaching traditionally only the science and engineering subjects will also have to have supplementation from entrepreneurship school. Can these students actually not just become job seekers, but also job creators? So adding the entrepreneurship schools on the campuses will become mandatory, will become a major initiative. If we have to set up incubation centers in each of the universities, I think entrepreneurship school is very, very important part of that particular bill. You need hands-on experience. So you cannot simply rely on classroom learning. You need to go to tinkerer's lab, as we call it. And these are the labs which are not just labeled and kept under lock and key, but rather they are made open to the students to work with, play with the things, try out their new ideas on almost 24/7 basis, figure out a mechanism to do that. So we will go beyond classroom and laboratory and start entering these tinkerer labs. We will go beyond research laboratories and we will start talking about prototyping facilities. So I have an idea, I experimented with that in tinkerer's lab. Can I convert that into a prototype? So can I get support for doing that in the university that I'm working on? So these are the changes which are envisaged. Can I supplement my hobbies with e-cell, entrepreneurship cells? Can I participate in programs which will make me ready for the world in terms of job creator? And can I supplement the placement cell with an incubator? So that is the type of blending, which is what is envisaged as we go ahead with this, educational institutions transformation in the new, with the new education policy that we are talking about. So for students' point of view, what will change? Of course, students will be still looking at the career options, and traditionally they have been looking at jobs, and that's why the placement cells, they were looking at jobs because they give you guaranteed incomes, they give you leave benefits, your quality of life probably becomes better, you have fixed working hours, less responsibility. So that is something which majority of the youth of the past aspired to do. But today's youth is not quite content with this. Today's youth wants to go one step further and wants to basically look at, in the new age, you don't become traditional job seeker, but you become job creator, entrepreneurship. Professor Singh elaborated on India having 50 plus unicorns. Now, unicorns, if you look at it by very definition, these are the startups which got valuation of more than $1 billion. Now, these were started from scratch based on some technology, which is exciting for the time. And these entities ended up creating value for the technology that they developed, because that technology actually impacted society. And that's why the investors were more than happy to invest in them. And obviously in the process, they created a lot of jobs. So these entrepreneurs in the new age are not job seekers, but they are job creators. And why one would want to become an entrepreneur? Because it brings in growth in the career, right? You have that satisfaction of creating jobs rather than just seeking jobs. You are independent. You are not at the mercy of somebody who will be looking over your shoulder all the time. You will have flexible working hours, and you will bring in change and exploration in the domain that you are working in. right? So there are certain advantages, certain benefits which are missing in the traditional approach, if I may call that as a traditional approach. Entrepreneurs will have certain opportunities which are different. Now, when I'm explaining these two, of course, there are going to be challenges. This particular path of entrepreneurship is also going to be fought with a lot of risks, and one has to be prepared before taking plunge in this kind of a domain. One cannot go jump and be unprepared and then have that feeling of sinking. Okay. Just to sum up, why should I worry about entrepreneurship and innovation? You have full control. As a student point of view, I'm saying this. We have full control over your destiny, greater freedom, greater income. You have scope for creativity, something which you may not find in a traditional job. Entrepreneurs are typically innovators. So you will bring in the change, right? So you will bring in the change and you have opportunity to change lives. And one thing which cannot be substituting any of that is that it provides a rush that is hard to duplicate. And this is something which is very, very important when you talk about taking plunge as innovator and entrepreneurship. And always remember, entrepreneurship can bring disproportionate rewards. Okay, so how do I be ready in the new education policy paradigm? If I'm a student and I want to be ready, what should I do? I should have a business plan. I should have a team. I should have good network. I should know my market, my target audience. Okay, so you need to have good idea, you need to have good plan, you need to have good structure, and you need ecosystem. One, they say that you can for raising a child properly, you can't have one individual next to the child, but you need a village to raise the child. That is something which is very often said, and this is very, very important when it comes to entrepreneurship ecosystem. I think that is something which one has to keep in mind, that ecosystem is very important. And from a university or institution point of view, how do I facilitate? If I want to implement innovation policies of NEP, what should I be doing as an institution? I should be giving that opportunity for the student to develop that skill of becoming an entrepreneur. I need to have the Tinkerers Lab. I need to have e-sales. I need to have entrepreneurship courses, which will prepare the student to take the plunge. We should have boot camps. There are a lot of government programs. Atal Innovation Mission is one of those examples. And there are multiple support points. And above all, if you really want to be successful in supporting your students in taking this plunge in the domain of innovation, in the domain of entrepreneurship, I think you should have incubators like SIGN perhaps. And why this is required, how institute can nurture this innovation and entrepreneurship. Always take an ecosystem approach. You have to have internal ecosystem, which will be consisting of, in the current domain, your student, faculty, departments, centers, and so on. You have to have external ecosystem, and that will mean that you need to have interaction closely with industry. You need mentors, like I said, either from within or without, and then investors. And this is something which is very, very important. And that is where the responsibilities of the institute's component, that is faculty, research guides, HODs, head of institutions, all this come into play. And government is actually facilitating this in the form of national innovation and startup policies, which it wants every institute to adopt. In next 2-3 minutes, I will actually demonstrate this as an example, because many a times people are not able to relate. They think that all this is on paper, it cannot be implemented. Let me quickly tell you through the science journey that how this is indeed possible in the systems within India. So SIGN in the present form is there from 2004, and it is basically part of an ecosystem to foster and support innovation and knowledge-based entrepreneurship at IIT Bombay. The main motivation for SIGN creation was translate IP generated at IIT into a venture. And the basis of incubation typically is economic growth. But coming from an academic setup, what is also important for us is that if an idea makes social impact, even though it may not make economic impact at a larger scale, we still will be game for it. And if the idea has a strategic value, let's say from defense point of view for the country, we still will be game for it to bring in that particular change. Just quickly to kind of show you the journey, we started in 2000 thanks to our alumni like Nandan Nilekani, Kamal Rekhi, and some faculty colleagues like Professor Patak, Lagu, and so on. who ran the pilot incubator at IIT Bombay. And this is, I'm talking after the dot-com burst. So this was a very interesting time. Sector focus that time was IT, as one would have thought that engineering institute, so IT would be focused. We actually incubated 12 companies that time, and support came largely from government body like GST and IIT Bombay. In 2004, we created a society structure. The focus again was ICT for first 5 years. We incubated 21 companies. Now more government funding started coming, and our efforts were recognized by DST in the form of incubation award. Next 5 years, again, the focus was ICT, but came 2014, after completion of first 10 years of SIGN, we shifted the focus and we became more broad-based accelerator and cross-border program. We incubated almost 85 companies in next 5-year plan, 5-year phase, and come to 2019 and 21, in last couple of years, despite the difficult times that we are all in, we have incubated 37 companies. Why I wanted to highlight this particular point is that difficult times actually bring out the scope for innovation. This is something which is what NEP has been emphasizing on, that innovation always looks at not the problems, not the challenges, but in these, it expects that we see the opportunity. And that is what many entrepreneurs saw, that there is opportunity to solve some problems. And that's why a lot more companies actually got formed in last couple of years than maybe the 2 years before that. So this is something which is very, very interesting. How are we doing on time? Maybe a couple of minutes more?
Yeah, okay. If you can conclude as soon as, it will be nice because...
Okay, fine. I'll do that. So the point I wanted to emphasize, and one more slide and then I will conclude, is that if you want to bring in the change, you need to have institutional approach. The point I wanted to highlight was, today, IIT, which was known for engineering education, today it has 50 different academic units and research centers. It has close to 700 faculty members, full-time or part-time. And lot of research happens in the core research areas. This is important, but it is supplemented with entrepreneurship school. It is supplemented with applied research groups. It is supplemented with e-cells and e-clubs, which will foster innovation and entrepreneurship in an ecosystem. All this is important for incubator like SIGN to succeed. And just to cut the long story short, that SIGN over the last 15-20 years has been able to support 184 startups with 52 current companies, 82 graduated companies. We had our own share of failures with 40 companies folded. Totally, SIGN would have invested about 25 crores, and companies together raised close to more than 3,000 crore funds. For every rupee SIGN invested in these, they were able to generate 127 rupees as external funding. And the valuation, total valuation of our companies, if you look at it, is exceeding $2 billion. And this is something which is quite remarkable for an academic institution startup, academic setup incubator, because people always think that this kind of value creation is not possible in academic setup because innovation doesn't happen. But what is required is that will to take up that challenge. And this is what I would like to highlight, that yes, it is indeed possible in Indian system as well to make an impact where not just IP gets generated, but employments also get created in the end. So to conclude, why I wanted to show you this particular slide and science journey a little bit is the emphasis of NEP on innovation can actually be carried out in the Indian setup also. Don't think that it is not possible to do these things in Indian setup. And that's what was the idea of sharing with you some of the slides of SIGN. And I will stop here and thank the organizers for giving this opportunity to share my thoughts on NEP and innovation. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Santosh, for such an informative and a nice talk. Like, it was really very nice relationship between the NEP and innovation. So now we will move to our final portion of the program, that is the presidential remark by our Honorable Vice-Chancellor, Professor Parimal Vyas sir. So for this audience, certainly we don't require the introduction of sir, but anyway, very briefly I will go because of the shortage of time. Professor Parimal Vyas sir, who is a distinguished academician and an able
Professor
administrator.
Pikeja, let us save on time because
Yes, sir,
40% people are with us. Let's not go into these rituals. I was very patiently listening Santosh Garpureji from IIT Mumbai. We would have appreciated if we would have only talked about sign, because I think we are celebrating 1 year of NEP, and the objective of such webinar is not to at all explain theoretically on NEP, because everybody knows. We have been talking, deliberating on it for about maybe for more than a year. And anyhow, that is what happens with we teachers. We fell in love with theoretical explanation. The purpose of these webinars, which are happening at the national level, is how to operationalize national economic, how to operationalize and implement national economic policy. I think that is to be appreciated, and the focus should be on that. And I think the case study which Santosh ji, because I know about IIT Mumbai and the contribution that has come. So that was probably the takeaway for today's webinar organized by Faculty of Science. I think I'll just take a couple of minutes. I think would not take time, but I wish that let me just try to talk about it. Whether the screen is visible, I want to know.
Yes, sir. Yes, it's visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think today this was a very, very important webinar, and because Faculty of Science makes a difference to the the research output and the ranking of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. I'm just sharing a presentation. I'm sorry, really, because we have spent a lot of time, more than 3 hours. Ideally, we can't hold audience before, sincerely speaking, for more than 25 minutes. And let me just try to make you understand that, see, what is required here is the blend of research, innovation, and ranking. 3 things are very, very important. If you just publish paper, if you focus on research output, it would not work, because we always say that, oh, it has to be socially relevant and it has to be economically significant. And yes, where do we stand in terms of international ranking arena? That is also very, very important. We are not running university in isolation, and ranking is the reality which we will all have to realize. There is no choice, and I can foresee in near future even departments, not universities or higher education institutions, for that we are talking about, even an individual teacher and the department would get ranked. So these are the areas, I believe these are the aspects. How can we build world-class higher education institution? I don't think I really need to talk at all, because you are all quite experienced. We are talking multidisciplinary education policy, talks about MERU. The focus is on faculty, capability and competence. We will have to have a social balance. So we are talking about equity and inclusion. The base of these, everything that we're talking about, when we talk about innovation or we talk about ranking, the key word here, I would say, is research. Innovation cannot take place without research. And yes, we need to go for institutional restructuring. I have been experiencing that the structure that we follow for the academic enrichment, like board of studies, faculty board, which are essentially political gymnasium, and we really need to dismantle and deregulate. We really, I mean it what I say, we really need to dismantle and deregulate, and we mostly bring experts from either the academic institutions or maybe certain universities. We need to bring experts, mandatorily we need to bring experts from industry if we really want to relate and take it to the next level. Yeah, regulatory system, I think it is all regarding how can we promote research, so our researchers can really focus on research rather than they waste a lot of their time and their frustration, which they share sometimes with me, in compliances which government wants or some funding agencies. And of course, we need to make smart use of information technology. That is how I reflect on effective governance. let me tell you, this Higher Education Council of India talks about these 4 verticals, which you all know. So I will not talk about it. I thought somebody would speak about the linkage between accreditation and ranking. Ranking is, it's like a fast food. You get NIRF for a year, and then there is probably not efforts are made. Serious efforts are not made to verify whatever data which are submitted. No cross-checking, no cross-verification, and maybe it's a yearly affair, and then there is a relative comparison. So I put like ranking, they're all like fast foods, but accreditation, like if you have A grade or A plus or A double plus, it stays with you, and I think there is a connect, and there are robust mechanisms, there are processes, there are compliances, and you have to really earn accreditation. It just cannot happen automatically. Yes, 4 aspects. I would like to focus on ranking because I was listening to all 3 eminent, experts. They all, have really put in a lot of efforts to do justice to those areas. Branding of higher education, I think, is very important. IIT is a brand, or ISC Bangalore is a brand. I believe this is very, very important. And then when we talk about ranking, the branding will come into picture. Better management and the improvement, because as a year-on-year basis comparison would take place. I think that we all know how the rankings, because we respect certain rankings. We may create our own ranking, maybe in NIRF and all that. But by creating ranking and then getting our universities or institutions, we may feel happy, oh yes, we have achieved. But I think we cannot close our eyes. We need to prepare our universities, our institutions, to enter into the world university rankings. I'm going to give some reflections. I believe even you are listening to Santoshji. Now I think we have to have not only multidisciplinary approach, collaborations I think is the key. And we will have to open up, we'll have to become open, flexible, we'll have to become transparent if you want to improve ranking. Look at these, the weightage which is given, by various ranking. I think the toughest, which I understand, is the academic ranking of world universities. Look at the focus is on research. If you look at the quality of education, quality of faculty, research output, and per capita performance, I think this is an area of introspection when we talk about theoretically about implementation of national education policy. I know when with 1,500 teachers in my campus, what is the per capita, what is the per teacher research output? We really seriously need to critically evaluate, and not just paper publications or not just citation index. The impact, the difference that it would make, in the lives or in the processes of the industry. Look at it where we stand in world university rankings. Maybe only 15, 16, and 7 institutions. This is the number of the universities excluding IITs and NITs. Number of universities from US 206 and China 168. I'm happy that my IQAC has prepared this presentation for me. This is very important: academic reputation, employer reputation, faculty student ratio, citations, international faculty that we have. Almost, I think in the state universities, almost it is in non-existence, because most of the vice chancellors are made to run from pillar to post, and they're being questioned on even appointments, where I think can we talk about international faculties in the state universities. I'm happy to share with you, we have students from 38 countries, but that requires, even kind of an IT and physical infrastructure and the flexibility in the governance system. So this is with reference to QS ranking. And the performance of our university, performance of number of institutions who are participating, and number of universities which are ranked. You can see they are 25, 28, 29. I think things are now moving compared to 177 universities from the United States of America. Look at the Times Higher Education rankings. I think that's very important. We started in 2010. Again, the same story. Teaching, learning environment. Look at the reputation. This staff student ratio, PhD to bachelor's ratio, PhD awarded to student ratio. Whether we like it or not, these are the ground realities. And when we operationalize national education policy, I expect that how can we operationalize this? These are the parameters on which, or these are the measurement criteria or criteria on which we will have to ensure that how do we operationalize it. Universities to ability to help industry with innovation. being a state university, preparedness of, the teachers, where they do consultancy, but how many of them they are really ready, honestly, with integrity to share all that they do with the academic institution. I think we really need to build this culture. We need to build culture of research in terms of volume, income, and reputation, in terms of citations, in terms of developing global outlook. That can happen only if we have collaborative publications. That can happen. That can also happen only when we have international faculties and international students. So I'm very critical, but I think let's be very honest. Number of institutions participating again in these. You can look at these. Again, the USA tops with 181, where in case of our our country, yeah, the numbers are before you. I don't think I really need to talk about it. These are some of the other rankings which are for your information. Center for World University Ranking, Center for Science and Technology Studies, and High Impact Universities, which prepares the Research Performance Index. And then also we talk about Nature Index, US News and World Reports, Best Global University Rankings. I think the biggest challenge that we all should face, and let's accept it, that how many of us, we try to go and talk about it with our students and our faculty members. Now we need to really develop awareness, SIMAGO, then university ranking by academic performance, and then NIRF, which I think everybody talks about, teaching learning resources and research and professional practice, graduation outcomes, outreach and inclusivity and perception, I think, which all of us are aware of. This is, we are talking about NIRF, and NIRF also talks about student strength, including PhD students and faculty student ratio. I think this is the Indian way of preparing and adapting the ranking that I have just now talked about. So, but let me. I will not go into the detailed discussion because I think all of you are aware of these, rankings and then their weightage. And yes, now I'm coming to accreditation, which you all understand. For universities, we follow. There are, maybe there are 36, 34 key indicators, and then there are 115 metrics, and out of these 115, 79 metrics they are quantitative, where remaining 36 they are evaluated by the NEP peer team visit. And we also can talk about the Web of Science Citation Index and Social Sciences Citation Index, which I think now we in India we have started talking about Art and Humanity Citation Index, Emerging Sources Citation Index, and these are the criteria. I think I will not go into this, but then I just thought that let me just try to touch upon these are the aspects which we all will have to keep in mind when today we are talking about this research, innovation and ranking. I think that is very, very important. I would stop sharing. I would like to just share with you that I'm very happy to share with each one of you that yes, we at MS University of Baroda. Now see, maybe this is just in one page. I thought as the Vice Chancellor, let me just try to share this with you. I know I think whether it is I will just try to share with you that yes, the H index of a university is now 96, and H index considering publications in last 3 years of MSU is 24. I-10 index of our university is now 2483, and I-10 index considering last 3 years publication is 138. The average impact factor is 3.06, and number of publications, if I talk about with the JIF above 3 is 172. We have produced 383 PhDs in last 3 years, and then currently 1039 PhD scholars. They are part of our MSU campus. Revenue which I have been mobilized through sponsored research project in last 3 years 103 crore, and revenue through consultancy project is not very impressive, but in last 3 years we mobilized about 10.8 crores. Now this is where do we stand, and I'm very happy to share with you today because the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, is multidisciplinary. In fact, our university exactly fits into what we call it as multidisciplinary education research. And today I'm very happy to share with you that the MSUB, if I look at about the MSU ranking, it's very, very interesting. We have been sustaining the rank in the Times Higher Education ranking. We are continuously appearing from 2017 to 2020. And the factor which goes against MSU is maybe the only university in the state where we have undergraduate and postgraduate teaching. The other universities, they only focus is only on PG teaching. But I think that is my strength. It's not our weakness. So MSU is appearing with 1001, and maybe the performance of the MSU in the what we call the Asian University rankings, I think we are continuously appearing, and we are improving the performance, consistently. Today only, the week, I hope you all understand, the week has released its multidisciplinary university rankings today itself. And at the national level, I'm happy to share with you, MSU has improved its ranking from 38 to 31. And in the state universities, there are only 2 universities. One is, I believe, I'm not sure, probably SVNIT, and then only MSU. We are at number 20 in West Zone. MSU is placed at number 6. The point which I want to make before all of you is that we should stop talking theoretically about national education policy. Absolutely no need talking about features and challenges and these and that. We all understand. We all will accept the importance of what we call innovation, incubation, and there are various schemes. Government of Gujarat, now we have SSIP policy. I think if what I personally believe as a Vice Chancellor, we need to bring complete transformation in our school education. I think it has to start right from a school. Whatever that we do there are few islands of excellence. When I look at the IITs, the kind of financial support and the infrastructure. But if I talk about 1,000 plus universities, what kind of support that we provide to these universities at national level? Now I think I'm anxiously waiting for National Research Foundation, and I wish that it should not happen that those who are strong, they become strong. We really need to, implement the concept of sharing of resources. Each university has certain strength. Each university has certain thirst area. How can we promote interdisciplinary research? And I would say, because maybe most of the participants, I think they have left. You can't expect them to be with us from 3 o'clock onwards. I don't think that patience would not be there. And I don't think ideally one should not speak for more than 25 minutes. Otherwise, the whole purpose is lost of such webinar. But I think the challenge before each one of us is to exploit alumni. That's very important. How we need to connect with our alumni. We need to connect with the corporate. We need to connect with industry. And how long we should go on asking support from the government of India and state governments. I believe the self-reliance is the need of the hour. If we really want to have academic autonomy in a true sense, what we need is, we need to make our courses. We need to become self-reliant. And when we can become self-reliant, if we collectively as teacher, if we design those courses which are required, which focuses on skills, which focuses on entrepreneurship, the presentation of Santoshji was far excellent. But then we wanted more to understand on the case study. Probably we apologize because we could not give you time, because you were discussing all those theoretical issues which could have been avoided. Then I think I know, because IIT Mumbai has created history by sign. I request Haribhai, someday if you can get him again, I would request him, let him have 1 hour session, and let us get input, because see, I was quite happy. 1 rupee to 1.2127 kind of, I don't remember exactly, but I think that is what I have said it several times. Let me conclude by saying there are 2 buzzwords that all of us should realize and remember. The first buzzword is innovation, and innovation cannot happen without research. That's the strong conviction I have. If we'll not build a research culture, innovation would not take place. Some accidental successes would be there, but we would not be able to relate it with the sustainable development goal, which I think Santoshi only was talking about in his address. And second is value driven offering. Yes, anything and everything that we do, if it cannot generate value, and value does not mean profitability, let me tell you why a student would come and join the university, why he should join BSc chemistry or BSc microbiology. What is our commitment? What are we going to offer? What are we going to offer? And I would say again, there is enough talk on placement. Let's not measure university only with the placement, because we know what kind of placement game is being played in our country. So I do not buy the argument. I do not buy. I think the challenge before all of us is, can we empower faculty members? Can we empower students? And the biggest challenge is, can we create a kind of an environment of constructive criticism? A Vice Chancellor, Dean had, I think, I'm very sorry to say, mostly we behave in a very, very autocratic way. I think that is what, Santoshi, I want. We need to change the entire governance system, the way we govern the system. And I think we have to make it more simple. We have to make it more user-friendly. And I think when I say user-friendly, both faculties and students, both of them, they should feel comfortable. We have to do everything to encourage research. We have to provide time to the teacher. We have to provide financial support. But above all, what I want is, we need to provide them a kind of a conducive, positive environment. This is the need of the hour. Policy come and go. There are so many facets of policy. We all talk about it. But if we cannot operationalize, if universities cannot build, cannot exploit, taking the advantage. And I know, as a Vice Chancellor, today one of the faculty was having a faculty board meeting, and some stupid questions were raised by some so-called members. Academic bank of credit, we have to accept. Multiple entry and exit, we have to accept. Why do we have all these kind of political gymnasium in terms of board of studies, faculty board, and then we have to pass through elections? I think unless and until we would not start respecting each other, we will not respect. If I'm not ready, and I think I need to have that respect, not just from my colleague, even from my student. I'm sorry to say, our students are well read. They read much more than sometimes some teachers when they go and take class. They are more techno savvy. These are some of the challenges that we all will have to address. This was a webinar which was very close to my heart, and my greetings to Haribhai for creating a record by getting 500 participants. But I don't look at number. I look at the end result. We could hold only 150, and how many of them are our own, where I think maybe out of compulsion, because we see there they are sitting. I think let's create a debate. Let's listen to each and everyone, and let's learn from each and everyone. Let's look at those best practices which IIT Mumbai follows, or maybe Indian Institute of Science Bangalore follows. I think if we are not ready for criticism, we would not be able to take universities to the next level. It was wonderful to listen to all the three eminent experts, Honorable Vice Chancellor of University of Hyderabad, and then Professor Ranaji. I know him. He's from Mathura Sanskrit University, Vice Chancellor. We know each other, and it was a treat to listen Garpureji. I know IIT Mumbai has created lot of stories, number of best practices that you follow. I wish, Haribhai, we have to have collaboration with such institute, to learn from them and see to it that how can we help our faculty members first and then students. I think if we can do that, probably that would be the real way, that would be the real gain that we all will have with the implementation of national education policy. With these words, I would close. I really don't want to, I don't mean to hurt anybody, but I think as a Vice Chancellor, I'm ready to face all kinds of criticism because we want to improve. If I understand that now everything is fine with the university, then then I think there is, if everything is fine with the faculty, if everything is fine with my department, I think then I believe we are in a flawless, we are in our own wonderland. I think each college, each academic institution has got best practices. Let's learn from them. Let's have a collaborative approach, and let's see to that how can we help, how can we attract best of the students, how can we attract best of the faculties to our university. I think these are the challenges we all are collectively facing, and I think I'm really, I really appreciate the support that I'm getting, and Professor Haribhai and your entire team deserves a lot of appreciation for for creating a response, for creating a platform, which has now today for almost 3 hours we have been talking about research, innovation, and ranking. I think they're all interrelated, and you cannot ignore or underestimate the importance of any of these. But whatever that we have achieved, the challenge before all of us is how do we sustain and how do we build further in near future. I think that would decide the effectiveness of the implementation of national education policy. Thank you very much, and may God bless all of us and give courage to see to it that we become a torchbearer in the implementation of NEP for many academic institutions in time to come. Thank you very much. Over to you, Professor.
Sir, thank you so much for blessing us. Thank you so much.
So we thank all the speakers and our Vice Chancellor, sir, and then all department faculty colleagues for attending and being for 3 hours with us. So thank you very much. It was really wonderful and very helpful, and we will take care of the things which our Honorable Vice Chancellor sir has suggested. Thank you, sir. So,